every morning is the love, our waking and uprising prove. Through sleep and darkness, safely brought, restore to life and power and thought. As we pray for our leaders, go with them, O Lord, renew in each your call to service, in thought, word, and deed, and we know your presence. As a nation, renew our faith, strengthen our hope, enlighten our understanding, enlarge our charity. In our weakness, be our strength. In our darkness, be our light. In any sorrow, bring us comfort. And be thou our guardian and our guide, and hear us when we call. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Minutes of the meeting held on Friday, November 22nd, 2019, to be deferred.
Move that those minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforesaid minutes be deferred. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Petitions, papers, government notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Caves Amendment Bill 2019.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the first reading. I beg to move the first reading of the Caves Amendment Bill 2019.
Questions that the aforementioned bill be read here first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
The questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended.
Government business, sir. Order number 8. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, to move the second reading of the Economic Partnership Agreement between the Caribbean Community, the Dominican Republic, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Bill 2019.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the opportunity to address the Chamber on the matter of the CARIFORUM UK Economic Partnership Agreement. And I welcome the opportunity because it represents one of the many, many things that are happening across our world today that affects the lives of our citizens. And it's one of the things that presents to our government the opportunity and challenge as to how we're going to create a meaningful future for our people. What path are we going to craft for Barbados that we can build the type of trade the type of jobs, the type of earnings that we need in order to be able to move our nation forward, our enterprises forward, our families forward. I just want to start with a little background to the CARIFORUM UK EPA. And CARIFORUM is just the CARICOM countries plus the Dominican Republic making up a grouping called the CARIFORUM, and we have entered into an agreement with the United Kingdom. And this all has to do with Brexit. Now, everyone knows about Brexit, that the UK is planning to leave the union that they have with the Europeans because they want to chart their own path. However, at the moment, CARIFORUM countries have free access for their goods into the UK via the European Union EPA agreement. So it means that when the UK actually leaves that union, we would no longer have an agreement that will allow the goods from the CARIFORUM countries to be able to enter free of duty into the UK market. And this would have presented a threat to us and a threat to our continued survival and prosperity. Hence, back in early 2018, the UK signaled that they wanted to urgently put together a companion partnership that mirrors the EU agreement so that trade between CARIFORUM countries and UK can continue smoothly whenever Brexit occurs. But it does not take effect until the UK actually leaves the European Union. Now, what was the status of trade up to this point in relation to the EU trade? CARIFORUM countries were engaged in an uneven type of trade going on between the various countries and the EU. So for Barbados, in 2011, we had one of our highest recorded numbers in terms of trade between us and European countries. It was $126 million in trade. But where we are today, some 7 years later, we have dropped from $126 million, Mr. Speaker, to $37 million. With the UK, because the majority of the trade that Barbados has with the EU really is, the main trade is actually with the UK. UK trade, as at 2011, was 107. So out of $126 million in trade that we trade with the EU, of that 107 is actually with the UK. So the UK is one of our major trading partners. That trade, Mr. Speaker, has now dropped to $13 million in 2018. So we've seen a precipitous drop in our trade. And why is that? Because we've come to the end of the LOME, we've come to the end of the preferential treatment for our sugar, and now we're unable to get the quotas that we used to have to be able to ensure the free access of our sugar into the UK. So the demand for that sugar has been dropping. And that has had tremendous consequences, not only for Barbados, but it's had consequences across the region. And there are two questions then that face us as a result of that. One, can we build the capacity that we can produce the goods and services which can enter the market that will replace what we're losing from our sugar? And the trade that we actually have right now, what can we do to preserve that trade? Now, I want to start with the last question. Why is it important for us to preserve that trade? What are the consequences if we don't have an EPA between ourselves and the UK in case of Brexit? It would certainly affect our oldest export, the sugar and rum. It would also affect our trade in artificial body parts. That's the Lens Tech export of spectacle lenses to the UK. I was very surprised when I first went to the ministry to understand that was a major trading good that we have with the UK. And then after that, you've got condiments, or small manufacturers, the people who make pepper sauce, the people who do other condiments and sauces, the people who make mauby and biscuits. Now, it is my contention that the main reason why condiments and mauby and biscuits happens to be on this list with the UK is because of the diaspora. Barbadians who hunger for the taste from home. Barbadians who want to connect with their past and therefore feel that their cupboards at all times must have some Bajan products. And that is one of the reasons, and I'll address it later, that's one of the reasons why regathering is so important, for us to be able to find our diaspora, because if we can get them to consume more of our goods and use more of our services, our trade could actually expand. So without that EPA, we would not have access to the UK market that we will be able to sell the goods that help to keep people employed at the various small manufacturers and in our rum and sugarcane industry. So when confronted with this possibility of the break with the EU, and they set in motion the plan to be able to establish a CARIFORUM UK agreement, the UK set out the premise that it is going to be a process of rollover. In other words, there are not going to be any major changes between the EU agreement and the UK agreement, that they would mirror each other, that they're modeled after each other, and therefore many of the changes were only minor changes. What that also means, Mr. Speaker, is not only does it mirror it, but it also means that we have to bear in mind that any obligations that we were obligated to have done under the EU agreement must also be presumed to have been done under the UK. In other words, they're not starting from scratch again. They're just picking up where we left off within the EU. There was only one area that caused some concern, and that was the issue of direct transport. In any trade agreement, one of the things that you want to make sure of is that the goods that are being sent to you truly come from that country of origin, that it was actually made in that country, that they have not taken goods from other people and brought them into our space, pretending that they're theirs to get duty-free access. So the protection of the trade is very important, and this means that your customs officials and your customs department has to be vigilant in terms of what is happening to goods when they actually pass through a territory. Now, because of trading routes, goods don't always go directly to the place where they're going to be their final destination. It may have to stop in a port somewhere else before it actually gets to you. It may be part of a bigger consignment, and it has to be broken up and repackaged and relabeled and distributed in smaller portions now to the various receivers of those goods. So in some cases, some of our goods would leave the UK, go to Europe before they actually come down to us. Or when we are sending things up to the EU, they may have to go through the UK, then go across to Europe. So the whole issue of the direct transport rule became a little contentious, because we wanted to be sure that when those goods actually reach the EU, that proper care is taken, that they're not tampered with, they're not changed in any material way, that beyond splitting, labeling, and packaging, nothing else has happened to those goods, and that those goods would be able to retain their rules of origin certification. And similarly, we wanted the same thing for our goods, otherwise we would have to pay duty in some European country, because we could not guarantee that the goods that arrived in the UK actually were the same goods that go across to the EU. So that was the only material difference, and it caused a little stress in the negotiations, but we were able to deal with it and come up with something that works for both sides. And so at the end of the process in March of this year, we were able to sign the UK EPA agreement. Now, what is an economic partnership agreement? In order to truly understand how that works, we have to understand how trade rules operate generally. And at the moment, across the World Trade Organization is the body that governs trade across the world. Countries came together under the WTO and set up a set of rules to govern how trade would be conducted, to ensure that they were fair, to ensure it was consistent, to ensure that there was access, etc. And so under the WTO rules, there are two main rules that have to be taken into consideration. One, that goods, when they enter a market, that the goods from different countries, if they are the same product, if they come under the same tariff heading, they must have similar treatment. What does that mean? That if we're importing hams from Jamaica, you're not giving them a preferential tariff rate as opposed to a ham coming from the United States, that you have to give both the same treatment for the same product. The second rule in the WTO is this, that when goods actually come into your borders now, they must also be given national treatment. So a country cannot decide that it is going to put a duty or a tax or a fee or some regulation on imported goods that is not extended to the domestic goods that are of the same nature. So you can't favor your own domestic production above your foreign trade. And this is to be done across the world in all trade agreements. Now, there's only one departure from this, and that is where the WTO allows for an exception in which you're able to form a free trade agreement. But what was the impact of WTO rules on trade? In the past, small countries like ours in the OECS, CARICOM, and so on, we could use tariffs to help protect licensing, regulations, and so on, to help manage the flow of trade into our jurisdictions. And the reason why this was done was to be able to give your domestic industries a chance to be able to be competitive in their own market, to give them a chance to be able to grow, to be able to persuade the consumer to buy that product in, and not the foreign product, so that we could maintain the jobs. Because every time we use foreign goods, we're obviously helping another country keep their workers in work. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't do that. Trade is necessary because we cannot produce every single thing that we need. However, it is important that we give our domestic enterprises to grow. So with the advent of the WTO, it made it extremely difficult when those rules were put in place. The most favored nation, where you cannot discriminate between countries, and when the good is in your jurisdiction, national treatment, you cannot unfair the export good, the import good from your domestic good. Because of that, it changed the landscape across the region, and it actually destabilized quite a few countries. Because in Barbados, for example, we were able to pursue manufacturing in furniture. We were able to pursue manufacturing in uniforms. We were able to attract a number of industries, so that we had Newton Industrial Park, we had Grisette's Industrial Park, we had Harbor Road. So many places in which a lot of businesses were doing manufacturing work that was able to provide jobs for our people and also provide us with foreign exchange earnings. But with the advent of those rules, it made it really, really difficult for our companies to be able to maintain their competitive advantage in their own country, and therefore we saw the loss of a number of jobs. So in furniture, there was a time when we used to have Hampton and Pierce. Lashley used to have a furniture factory. And many young men were able to get the opportunity to be a part of that enterprise and to be able to earn a living and to be able to go home and take money home for their families. In terms of the uniforms and garments, we had places like MAPS, we had places like Myco, we had places like Yankee. But, Mr. Speaker, all of those have disappeared from off of the landscape because the new trading rules made it impossible for us to maintain our competitive advantage. And therefore, women who lived in Durance or Halls Village or Haynesville or in Bank Hall, Mr. Speaker, or in the city or in Silver Hill, who used to look forward to that job, going to that garment factory, those jobs disappeared from under them, and it made it very difficult for them to be able to take care of their families. So those rules changed the landscape of Barbados and forced Barbados now to have to look around for what are the other things we are going to do. So it was within this context, as countries were looking at how they were going to manage their trade inside a situation of WTO rules, that there was a push to create an exception. And that exception was to allow countries to come together to be able to create a regional trade agreement, to do a free trade area, to come together and agree that these 4 countries or these 10 countries would come together and actually form a free trade area in which the majority of their goods would enter duty-free into each other's market, and then they would have a common external tariff against goods from third countries. That means you suspend the most favored nation treatment principle for those countries because you are giving preferential access to this select group of countries. And what happened was that the world rushed into a number of free trade agreements. And there are about 25 major free trade agreements. Now, that was not the end of the problems that were facing the Barbados and the OECS, because although you had these regional agreements, these economic partnership agreements, there were still other factors that were pushing on our trade. So, for example, the bigger countries, although they already had a serious advantage in trade in relation to other countries, they were still on the hunt for cheaper goods, for greater profits. And what this did, it led to the relocation of industries that had their origins in the developed countries, but now that capital was used to form companies in developing countries where labor was cheaper, maybe where energy might be cheaper, raw materials might be closer at hand. And this led to a race to the bottom, Mr. Speaker. And that race to the bottom meant that these countries now were vying with each other to attract that investment into their space. And governments found themselves in negotiations in which they had to give up more and more, give incentives. Labor had to give up more and more. That very often some companies really paid people not even sometimes a living wage. If you look across Asia, you have factories, Mr. Speaker, that will not give a worker even $180 a month to live on. There are factories that have people working extremely long hours, and some even include child labor. So this created a problem. How would a Barbados and an OECS and a CARICOM, how were we going to try to find opportunities for our people where they could get decent jobs, where we could build foreign exchange, where we could grow our enterprises? And this is what made getting into an economic partnership agreement attractive to these countries. So in an economic partnership agreement, and our UK EPA covers this, it will cover your trade in goods. It will speak to things about rules of origin, what constitutes a good coming from that territory, even if it has some inputs from other countries. You also have rules governing the duties. If duties are to be reduced, are they to be reduced immediately? Are they to be phased? You also had trade defense sections in your EPA, which told you if your industry came under severe pressure or you were having balance of payments issues and you needed to be able to take control over your imports, under what conditions and what tools can you use to be able to defend your trade? Then there were other requirements for trade facilitation. And trade facilitation covers the process by which goods are able to enter at the port, how the customs operates, the ease of getting information, the transparency of the transactions, the consistency of the application of the regulations. And these are things that they insist must be part of a EPA in order to facilitate trade. And I'm very happy to say that Barbados has moved with some quick dispatch, that the Prime Minister has pulled together a team to be able to look at the ease of doing business in Barbados. They meet on a regular basis, and we have a series of items that a number of ministries have to put in place to ensure that we are able to comply with requirements for trade facilitation as is required by the WTO, as what will be required under the various EPAs, the EU, the UK, and to make sure that we are compliant with all of the things that they have required of us. It also covers technical barriers to trade, and it covers the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which are to guarantee the health of a product meeting a particular standard. Now, technical barriers to trade and the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, Mr. Speaker, have been used very effectively by a number of countries to help block trade. So on one hand, they say, yes, we have a trade agreement. Yes, your goods could come free of duty, but it has to meet this specification. But it must do this. But it must do that. No, it can't come in if it does not meet that. So when one thinks that one has a nice wide open space in which to build trade, the truth is you actually have a minefield. So this presents a major challenge for us as to how we are going to be able to make effective use of our EPAs. And because the UK EPA and the European EPA mirror each other, if we look at our experiences under the EU EPA, you can see that there are some issues. They do a 5-year review on the EPA implementation and its performance, and to look to see what is the impact of an EPA. Have the parties within that EPA gained some sort of benefit? So a study was done on the period 2008 to 2018. And the report that was brought back as to the impact of the EPA on our countries, the report said improvements are very modest. Improvements are modest. In other words, the EPA as yet has not delivered as fulsomely as we would have liked it to perform. But why? One of the reasons, the EPA was signed between 2007 and 2008, and we would have had a change of government at that time. It was also at a time when the world went into a major financial crisis, which affected world trade, which affected the economic fortunes of countries across the world. So it was very difficult for them to separate out the impact of the world recession as to whether the EPA was really able to perform. But I did some research, and I noticed that in the CARIFORUM countries, the Dominican Republic was able to do reasonably well. I'm not saying they could not have done more if there had not been an economic crisis, but they certainly were able to command some trade that the rest of our partners in the region were unable to command. The Dominican Republic, Mr. Speaker, was able to reach $57 million in trade between themselves and the European Union, particularly in the area of goods. They were able to attract $1 billion in inward investment into the Dominican Republic. They were able, Mr. Speaker, to set up businesses in terms of the services sector. They were able to do business in terms of pharmaceuticals, in terms of aviation, in terms of education, alcoholic beverages, and other manufactured goods. They were able to attract some 20 companies into the Dominican Republic. So they were able to make good use of that EPA and convert it into trade opportunities for their country, convert it into jobs for their people, convert it into foreign exchange earnings. In CARICOM, we were not quite as fortunate as the Dominican Republic, and there are a number of reasons why we were not able to maximize the use of the EPA. So despite the very hard work that would have gone into the formation of the first EPA, we have not seen the benefit. I want to focus particularly on Barbados' performance under the EPA and what was necessary for us to benefit more. One of the things that the EU EPA recognized was that you had two unequal partners, that CARIFORUM countries and their enterprises in no way could match the giant companies that you find in the European Union. And they also recognized that if we were to immediately open our ports and open our trade to allow their goods to come in from day one, we would actually be swamped and our enterprises would actually collapse. So the agreement provided a 25-year grace period to allow the CARIFORUM countries the opportunity to do a number of things. One, they were given the opportunity to be able to build production capability that they could develop the goods and services that would be attractive in the European market, in the British market, that they would be able to establish the standards, that they'd be able to upgrade the operations of their enterprises so that they could meet the sanitary and phytosanitary standards that would be required of them. It was to give them space to be able to make the adjustment that they could take advantage of the trade opportunities under the EPA. It was also to give the governments and the economies an opportunity to adjust to the fact that if tariffs are removed from the goods coming from the EU, then you had to prepare yourself for the fact that government revenues are going to suffer. They would get less revenues from their tariffs. And therefore, the economy needed time to adjust and governments needed time to build up and find other ways to generate revenue to replace what would be lost under an EU agreement. So that 25-year window was important. So we signed the agreement, worked hard on it, got it ready for signing by 2007. And in January 2008, in comes the Democratic Labour Party onto the Barbados space. And for the next 10 years, for the next 10 years, absolutely nothing of consequence was done to utilize that space to make this nation ready for competition, to make our enterprises vibrant, to transition our labor, to understand what would be needed now to allow us to compete in the European market. Instead, the Democratic Labour Party, in an act of sheer political malpractice, ignored the future of this country and placed it in peril because they were taken up with a tax and thief frolic. They were taken up with giving contracts way above their value to people. They were taken up with filling every nook and cranny with people in jobs where there was no work. They were taken up with buildings at exorbitant prices while ignoring the key things that were needed to be done in this country to keep it safe. Let me explain, Mr. Speaker, what is the problem of not building production capability within your 25-year window to allow you to fully meet the impact of imports coming from the European Union, or in this case, with this particular EPA, the UK. What is the impact of that for us? In the OECS has very limited production capability. Therefore, they don't have a lot of enterprises. So government makes its general revenue actually from the tariffs which they charge on goods. This is how they raise the revenue to be able to take care of their citizens. So when they join an economic partnership agreement in which they agree to remove tariffs from goods coming from their partners, it represents a sacrifice for them. Their hope is that, one, they would try to find ways to build production capability so that they too can enjoy the duty-free access. They hope that if there's growth in the region and growth in their own territories, that jobs will become available and that their people will be able to move freely to be able to go and get those jobs so that they can earn and send money back home to be able to take care of families, and this would help them to grow. They're hoping that by creating favorable conditions, they will attract foreign direct investment in tourism and financial services and in manufacturing and in other things that would allow them to grow. But if we come to a place, Mr. Speaker, where we come to the end of the tariffs and all of the goods from the EU and the UK are able to come into our space free of duty, and they have not built up production capability, and we have not built up production capability, this is what is going to happen. That the consumers in the OECS will shift to purchase the goods coming from the UK, coming from the EU, because the prices are lower. That happens, Mr. Speaker, right now in relation to chicken. In Antigua, they import a lot of chicken from the United States because it's cheaper. You can get a lovely tray of legs, maybe with 10, 15, $10. That same tray in Barbados won't reach that price. It'll be far in excess of $10. So the consumer in the OECS will switch and will take the goods that meet their pocket, as opposed to taking the regional goods, which would have been protected under the CARICOM Treaty, but are more expensive than what they can get from outside. What does that mean for Barbados? For Barbados, it means that we would lose a critical market in the OECS for the goods which we now produce. If you go to Guyana and you go into a supermarket, you can find Barbadian goods, you can find Wabisco products, you can find Morby, you can find all kinds of things in a Guyanese supermarket. You go to St. Lucia, you're going to see some of our goods. And therefore, if we were to lose that market, Barbados would suffer twice. Not only would we have goods flowing into our own market and disturbing our domestic enterprises, but their market in the OECS would actually disappear. So it would be difficult, Mr. Speaker, for our manufacturing sector to actually survive under the flood of UK and EU goods. What would that mean? Government revenues would dwindle, and it would make it more difficult for government to provide social services, the services like sanitation and roads and schools, and to be able to keep the airport and seaport moving, to be able to provide the housing that people need, to take care of our elderly. That money would be under challenge. And therefore, for a government to come in 2008 and to linger and sleep, to be recalcitrant in the execution of their duty to look at what is needed to be able to make Barbados prosper under an EPA and to waste 10 years of our time is an act of political malpractice. What was needed? What was needed in order to take us forward during those 11 years? First, it was absolutely necessary that if we were going to build strong enterprises that could match or compete in the European market, those businesses would have to grow and expand. Where would they be able to grow? Not in their domestic space. The domestic space is too small. You cannot grow big businesses with 300,000 people buying from you. You need more than 300,000 people to make a viable business. This is why CSME was important to us. CSME absolutely must work for the survival of not only Barbados, but the rest of the Caribbean, so that we can be a viable trading partner in the world trading games. But what happened to CSME under the Democratic Labour Party? Now, Mr. Speaker, it has to be understood that Barbados is the lead country over CSME, one of the most important organs in CARICOM, the organ that has the opportunity to deliver more benefit to the citizens of CARICOM than probably any of the other bodies that we have. CSME, Single Market and Economy. When the Democratic Labour Party came into office, Mr. Speaker, the first thing that was put out into the CARICOM atmosphere was ever so welcome, wait for a call. An act of economic suicide. Mr. Speaker, I could not believe my ears. I could not believe that a government could get into the practice, get into the position where they believe that the major thing in our relationship with CARICOM is that you don't want people coming here. That this was a big threat to us. That there was absolutely nothing to gain from our trading relationships among ourselves. And therefore, they don't want people coming here. Ever so welcome, wait for a call. You would think, Mr. Speaker, though, that after a year in government, looking around at what it is you needed to do, big financial crisis, foreign exchange taking a hit, tourism down, that any responsible government would look at the fact that, look, we need to find alternatives to shore up and to prop up tourism, financial services under threat, OECD moving against you. Any responsible government would recognize that it would have to turn quickly and look at what are the other things we need to do in order to build our trade and to shore up our foreign exchange. So when the Speaker of Ever So Welcome Wait for a Call passed off the scene after a year, you would believe that you would have seen a change in policy with the new leader. But, sir, the then Prime Minister, Mr. Stewart, or as Barbadians like to call Frooms, but I prefer Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart said, cool it. Let's slow down the CSME. Let's take it easy. Don't let us rush. Mr. Speaker, you would think that Easy Boy had risen from the dead. You would think that in the political corridors we had given birth to a new Easy Boy. Take your time. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me explain what take your time was going to do. It meant that, one, we would not be able to build the framework that would allow enterprises to grow, and I will address that in a moment, because since we've come into office, Prime Minister with lead responsibility for the CSME has moved at full throttle to put in place the things that we are going to need to build trade in this country. When she talked about mission critical, she meant mission critical, Mr. Speaker. So we needed to have a situation, Mr. Speaker, where we were going to complete our plans that would make CSME work for the Barbadian public. What are some of the things that needed to be done? One, we had to make it easy for people and capital and labor to move across the CARICOM space. We had to make it easy for people to do business in the space. We have to make sure that transport is available to move people and goods in the space. We have to make sure that regulations and processes are consistent, they are fair across the region to allow people to engage in whatever trade of goods or services that they wish to be engaged on, and that enterprises would have access to a sufficient pool of labor so that they can get the necessary skills that will help us to build strong enterprises that will help us to trade with people outside of our region. This is what was necessary, Mr. Speaker. So since we have come into office, we have had to fast-track free movement of people. Because up until the time when we came in, it was generally just the professional, skilled people who could move. The people with the degrees, the academics, they could move. We were not making provision for the ordinary CARICOM citizen to be able to move. And so the first order of business was to complete the work of free movement that would allow artisans to move. Mr. Speaker, that means the electricians down in Haynesville. Mr. Speaker, it means the masons out in Halls Village. Mr. Speaker, it means the carpenters over in Bank Hall. Mr. Speaker, it means the people who have those technical skills that we are turning out at SJPP every year. It means giving them the opportunity to move across the space, to be able to provide the labor that is required so that enterprises can grow and bring prosperity to this region. That's what it means, Mr. Speaker. So we hasten to add more categories to the free movement of people, to be able to look at the agricultural workers, to look at the security guards, that ordinary citizens can treat the CARICOM space as their space and make a living from it. But for that to work, people had to be able to move with their families. To go and work and have to leave your family behind, especially if you were going for a long time, this would break up families. And we know this from our history. We know when Panama Canal was built, how thousands of Barbadian males went across to build the canal and left families back here. And in 2 turnarounds, they started new families out there because they weren't able to take the families from here there. So they started a second one, Mr. Speaker. Broke up families. So we don't want to make that mistake. People must now have contingent rights where their partners, their spouses, their children, their dependents have the opportunity to be able to move with that skilled national so that they can make another place in CARICOM their adopted home, so that CARICOM becomes one people with one space, one destiny, therefore one prosperity, Mr. Speaker. This is important to us. And the Barbados Labour Party moved with alacrity on these matters, and under the leadership of our Prime Minister, contingent rights, and believe me, it was contentious, but contingent rights were able to be secured. We then had to look at single registration windows to make it a one-stop shop, that anybody who wanted to start a business did not have to go 15 different places. This would help us to comply not only with our CARICOM obligations, but our EPA obligations with the UK and the EU, because if you don't make business certain, you're not going to attract foreign direct investment. If you make it too difficult, if you take 15 days to process something and 3 months to process the next thing, and you have to go to 15 different places to get acts done, Mr. Speaker, it becomes too difficult. There are other people who facilitate business in 2 business days, sir. Do it in less than a week, sir. So we can't be taking 3 and 4 weeks to do what other people are doing in a couple of days. There are some places, Mr. Speaker, you can get it done in a couple of hours because they effectively use IT technology to assist them to be able to enable businesses to operate in their space. And that is the hard work, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, they are working on all of those matters to make it easy for people to do business, that we can attract investment from the EU, from the UK, and from CARICOM, and from any other place in the world, because we are dealing with making it easy to do business. All that is what we have done, Mr. Speaker, in about 18 months. Hard work. Hard work. Financing is another thing, sir, that would have been needed. If we are going to take advantage of the 25-year grace period, build enterprises, they have to be able to access capital. One of the unfortunate things is that many of us in here, I don't see the exceptionally moneyed ones, but most of us didn't get a lot of money from parents. All of us come off the plantation, sir. We were working in the yard, sir. We came out from the plantation yard and were in our little chattel houses in the villages, Mr. Speaker. We ain't had no money. We ain't had no savings. We ain't had no property to pass to anybody. We didn't have any shares. So in that situation, and you're trying to build your domestic enterprises, what are you going to do? You have to find financing. Now, when we left office in 2007, we left an enterprise growth fund. We left a fund access, Mr. Speaker. Under the enterprise growth fund, they had about 5 different funds to do all kinds of things. It was agriculture, it was innovation, it was small business, it was tourism, you name it, there were funds there. And we kept those funds replenished so that our people, ordinary Barbadians that came from off of the plantation, could get some finance to start some businesses, that we could grow our domestic enterprise strength, that we could trade, Mr. Speaker. That was the legacy that we left 2008. In 10 years, Mr. Speaker, they almost killed the Enterprise Growth Fund. Couldn't get replenishment. They hardly were able to do any loans of any kind. We were not able to do any investments. Mr. Speaker, Enterprise Growth Fund was treading water for 10 years. Fund access, and my colleague from St. George South, I know, will speak to what the Ministry of Commerce is doing to help form new enterprises in this country. What are our plans? What we've already done, Mr. Speaker. And I would want the Chamber to look forward to that presentation. So these were the things that needed to be done. But Prime Minister recognized that it was more than just the provision of capital to our domestic enterprises, that if we were going to build really big, solid enterprises, you needed to get access to a lot of capital. People had to be able to borrow $1 and $2 and $3 million or $10 million, Mr. Speaker. And so Prime Minister has articulated to her colleagues that, look, in this region, we have a lot of savings. Our savings are in excess of $30–40 billion in the region. They're sitting in banks, Mr. Speaker. Many of them banks that are not homegrown banks, sir. And what is being experienced by our savers, by our citizens at the hands of these banks is that they are in dissaving, sir. That they're being offered 0.0 something % in interest. Well, that ain't nothing, Mr. Speaker. Well, you can't make no money off of that. They're still lending at 8%, you know, and 10%, you know. A credit card still up at 17 and 18 and 20%, you know, Mr. Speaker. But the savings of Barbadians, of CARICOM citizens in the bank, getting next skin to nothing. And then they're charging you, sir, for even breathing in the bank. Sir, your money is sitting in the bank. They're busy using it, lending it hither, thither, and yon, making good interest on it, sir. But they're charging you commitment fees. Go and get a loan, Mr. Speaker. Commitment fees, negotiation fees, interest, and then you got to pay for the lawyer. Yours and theirs, sir. Sir, with a situation like that, you can't grow an economy. And Prime Minister recognized that we have to look for some financing mechanisms. So right now, she's engaging in discussions with her colleague heads as to what instruments can we come up with that will help us to mobilize the capital in the region and use it to do proper investment across the region, that we can build our export trade, that we can engage the EU, China, USA, UK, Africa, whoever we need to engage, that we would have enterprises with the capacity to meet the demand if we can produce the product to the standard that they're looking for, Mr. Speaker. That is the work that is being done now. Sir, a lot of work. So more enterprises have to be formed. We have to help grow our entrepreneurs. We have to create the environment for them to be successful. And sir, I want to speak a little bit to the central bank. The central bank actually has a number of initiatives that are to support export. And what we have recognized, Mr. Speaker, is that while they have things to support people, to get working capital, to get insurance to cover their trade in goods, to allow them to get funds to be able to fulfill an order, etc., and that they can get factoring as well. Sir, these things help enterprises to grow. The unfortunate thing is that those initiatives are not being effectively used, that there's some reluctance on the part of banks to actually use them to be able to give entrepreneurs in Barbados access to capital that we can build the enterprises that we need. Once we can overcome that, however, sir, the implication for us is that we are going to have the ability to meet the requests of any demand that we create in the UK or in the EU for any good or service. One of the challenges that our missions in UK share with us is they work hard, Mr. Speaker, to find potential buyers for Barbadian goods. So they may interest a supermarket chain, they may interest a hotel chain, or some business that needs our product. They take the samples, the entrepreneur goes, they present the samples, they use the samples, say, this is good stuff, we want some. Can you ship 20 containers to me in a week? Dog dead. Why? Well, we have good products, we do not have the capacity to meet the demand if we stir it up. So this is something that has to change. So, for example, the Caribbean Export Development Agency reported in 2018 that Caribbean condiments from across CARICOM, we were able to sell $8 million in condiments to the UK, to the EU, because there is a demand for the product, sir. What are we going to do to help them to be able to build capacity to get to 20 million, 30 million, 50 million? That's the question that we have to answer. How are we going to enable them to play in the big space? So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of catching up based on the poor performance of the Democratic Labour Party in actually doing what it needed to do to build production capability. And what would that production capability, what would that have meant for the ordinary citizen? Mr. Speaker, if you build big enterprises, they're going to need HR managers. They're going to need operations managers. They're going to need a pool of technical skills. They're going to need accounting services. They're going to need people to work on the line. They're going to need maintenance people. They're going to need IT people. When you build out your enterprises, then your students from the university, your students from SJPP, all of them now are able to get the opportunity to get a job in Barbados, to live home. That's what they want to do. But when you fail to build enterprises over 10 years, and every year you have 4,000 children coming out from our educational institutions, 2,800 from UE alone, and they button bout every day, every week, every month, can't get a job, still have to live home, have a first degree, have a second degree. Some even went as far to get their doctorate to see if it would help them to get a job, but there were no jobs. Why? Because we have not built enterprises, Mr. Speaker. So we've disappointed those children. We've disillusioned them, Mr. Speaker. And what have they been forced to do? After 3, 4, 5 years sitting at home, they have to get up and go elsewhere. Now, we would have paid close to $200,000 or $300,000 in their education over the years, Mr. Speaker. We would have invested in them, Mr. Speaker. We gave them their values. We gave them their vision. We gave them their pride. We built their confidence and their self-esteem, hoping that we could have converted that into good social and economic development for Barbados, but those young people were forced to go overseas because we did not build the enterprises that will help us to take advantage of a European EPA. And if the Democratic Labour Party was still in office, the UK EPA would go the same way too. But I'm happy to let the country know, I'm happy to let this chamber know, the DLP is not here, the BLP is here, and we are here with a plan. We are here with a plan, Mr. Speaker. We are going to build the enterprises that are going to allow us to be competitive. Now, what have we done in terms of trying to secure space? You cannot ask your enterprises to train or to practice their growth in a huge market like the EU or China straight off. They would get killed, they would get out. If it was a cricket match, that first fastball, lick up, stumps gone, back in the pavilion, sir. So we know that. So they need a practice space where they can practice, grow slowly, make the little mistakes and correct them and move on. So what have we done? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Prime Minister has tasked the ministry to start looking to engage new country partners. And the focus is not only for engagement on the big issues of climate change, on the big issues in the UN and at the WTO and so on. It is also to promote trade and open markets for our goods. Why is this important, sir? Because of the pattern of world history, trade is north-south. The people in the south produce the primary products, they send it to the north, they process it, and then sell it back to us. So we're always poor, they're always rich. As a result, the trade routes are also built on the north-south. So if I want to get goods to Africa, they gotta go up to England and then swing and come back down. If I want to get something over to Asia, I gotta go through United States. If I want to get something in Latin America, I gotta go up to Miami and come back down. Sir, it keeps us locked in a system in which we cannot win. What also happens is, because of that north-south construct, it means anytime something happens in the north, it shakes us down in the south. They start to sneeze, we get pneumonia, sir. So one of the strategies that the CARICOM members have been looking, and in particular driven by our Prime Minister, has been, let us look at South-South cooperation. Let us identify other people in the South. They're buying goods and services from people in the North. Why can they not buy from us? We are producing goods and services here in the South, here in Barbados. Why can we not sell to them? Hence, you would see a heightened activity in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to get out and start to build the political relations, to build the political alliances, to create the trade agreements, to create memoranda of understanding, so that we can start the promotion of business and trade, so that Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has an even greater business leaning at this moment, sir. And it's working us very hard. We believe that if we are able to build up that South-South, we are going to be able to stabilize ourselves when there's a world crisis. If there's a world crisis, you would not be as shaken because you don't have all your eggs in one basket, but rather you're spread out across the world, and we will be better able to withstand impacts and shocks to the system. You won't eliminate them totally, but you would not be cat-spraddled in the way we were cat-spraddled, sir, back in 2008, 2009. Thank you. So what are some of the things, sir, that we have done in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade? Prime Minister identified some priority countries in CARICOM. She said, deepen trade with the OECS. Deepen that. We already have a good trade. Let us deepen it. She said, bring Guyana online. Bring Suriname online. Let's look at Panama. Panama is technically outside of CARICOM, but is a country that we have an affinity with because of the past history, and we recognize a willingness on their part to be able to engage. There are other territories within Latin America that have been engaging us, and we are willing to do business with them. But CSME must provide us with a strong base so that we are able to build strength and encourage prosperity across the region. The prosperity of every CARICOM member, every CARIFORUM member is prosperity for us. Because if they grow, if they get jobs, they have money to spend, then our goods and services will have a place in their space. So what was done? In Suriname, Prime Minister established a special envoy to go down. She brokered the Brokopondo Agreement. We developed all the elements that must go into that. What are the areas of common pursuit? What are the areas we can trade in? How can we do technical cooperation with each other? Let us establish a joint commission where the officials can sit down and hammer out what are the 3, 4, 5 things that we can do together that would redound to the benefit of the Surinamese and the Barbadians. And sir, that took place just a few weeks ago, right here in Barbados. The Surinamese came down and we had a wonderful joint commission. They agreed on a number of actions, and sir, things are on the road. Right now, our special envoy will be going back, or is back right now in Suriname, helping to move things forward. We have our former Chief Agricultural Officer, and I hope that my fellow colleague minister from St. Philip will speak to the role of agriculture and food security and trade, sir. But we have somebody in Suriname now looking at how we're going to do agricultural cooperation, how we're going to do tourism, how we're going to sell education services, sir. Just about 4 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, we would have had a joint Guyana-Suriname business meeting in which Surinamese business people came. About 300 Barbadian businesses came together. We talked via video link with Go Invest in Guyana. And sir, we had a powerful, powerful meeting in which we were able to examine what were the opportunities available to us in Guyana and how Barbadian enterprises can engage the space. Sir, Guyana is growing at a tremendous rate, and construction is one of the things that we want to pursue with them. Agro-processing is another. They need a lot of retail and general services. Sir, not that they don't have some, but they don't have enough for their demand, and therefore there's opportunity there. In terms of services, education, tourism, opportunities for health food production so that we can cope with the NCDs. Guyana will present a tremendous opportunity. And sir, what has happened so far, not only do we have business from the Surinamese businessmen that came here for Barbadian enterprises, and a number of Barbadian enterprises have gone to Suriname to help firm up these deals and to look at the opportunities for agro-processing, but also with Guyana. We have a number of big businesses that have quietly gone down to Guyana and gotten started, sir. But just this year, and I'm happy to report, just this year, I got the report that 2 more businesses, smaller businesses this time, sir, have gone into Guyana and have actually started work this year. In September, 6 service companies went across to Guyana to look for opportunities, and they are now getting ready to establish themselves in Guyana. And sir, end of this week, a small grassroots group of young entrepreneurs will be going to Guyana to look at the opportunities there for them in terms of natural products. Sir, our trade in the OECS and CARICOM in the CSME is on the move. On the move. Panama, sir, this is what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is doing to be able to create opportunities for our businesses to build capacity that we can engage the EU, engage the UK. We have just established our ambassador for Panama. We have established an office in Panama, and we are looking forward to engaging the Panamanians as a whole, but in particular, the Barbadian diaspora there. We believe that if we can reconnect them to their roots and connect them to the goods and services that we have come up with, our Shirley biscuits, sir, and our bread and cheese. Sir, if we can reconnect them to our products here in Barbados, that, sir, we can do some serious trade with Panama. Haiti is another place that we wish to engage. Now, it was reported just today on the news that the IMF has indicated that Haiti is in big trouble, that the continued political infighting, the continued distress of the economy, sir, has weakened it, and Haiti is in a difficult place. Now, the average Barbadian might ask the question, so what that got to do with us? We got our own problems that we sort out ourselves and let them fight for themselves. We do without them all this time. Sir, the CARICOM CSME space is 14, 15 million people, sir. Of that 14, Haiti is 11 million. If Haiti were to fail, we would not have sufficient people to make a viable market in CARICOM if we want to build enterprises that can really produce, that would have scale, sir. So it is not in the interest of CARICOM to allow Haiti to fail. Haiti right now, Mr. Speaker, imports a lot of eggs. That's an opportunity for our poultry farmers here, sir. Haiti needs lots of goods and services. Those are opportunities for us, sir. So we have to be engaged with Haiti, and we have to be engaged in their future. We have to be engaged in their prosperity. Now, Barbados has set its sights, if we're going to build productive capability that would allow us to take advantage of our economic partnership agreements, we have to go outside of CARICOM and the region too, sir. So you will see that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, under the guidance of the Prime Minister, Mia Moore-Motley, that we have to engage Africa with quick dispatch. And sir, we had 2 wonderful visits from the heads of government here in Barbados, Ghana and Kenya, signaling that Africa, signaling that Ghana and Kenya interested in CARICOM see it as an important part of their own strategy for how they are going to engage the world, seeing Barbados as a potential gateway into not only CARICOM, but Latin America, sir. But what can we do with Ghana? And I just want to share this so that you can see how, if we are strategic, sir, we can build capacity to enable us to engage the big players. Ghana right now, sir, imports 153,000 tons of chicken. 153,000 tons of chicken. A lot of that, sir, they import from the EU. A lot of that, sir, they import from the United States. A lot of that, sir, they import from Brazil. The fact that they can pull chicken from as far as the United States, as far as Brazil, and Barbados is closer to them, sir, it says that it is not impossible for Barbados to participate in exporting to Ghana. We just have to solve capacity, SPS, and transport. That's what we have to solve, sir. Just imagine, and I know, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member to my right, the honourable member for St. Philip South, dreams about exporting chicken to Ghana. And so how are we going to go about it? I want to show the link between fulfilling Africa's need and how you have to use the CSME to make it happen. Now, Barbados is 166 square miles. You need a lot of space even to produce 53,000 tons of chicken in a year. Where are you going to find the land space to be able to do that? Sir, you're going to find it in Guyana, you're going to find it in Suriname. Barbados now has to look at how are we going to capitalize our poultry producers, our poultry farmers who are interested in going to the next level to do commercial farming. That is why discussions are going on with Suriname about access to land for Barbadian farmers. Not only to do chicken, but black-belly sheep too, sir. If we can identify enough space that would allow Barbadian capital and Barbadian entrepreneurs to be able to set up poultry enterprises in Guyana, in Suriname, then we stand a good chance of being able to engage the Ghanaian market to be able to get even 53,000 tons of that chicken. We don't want the whole hog, sir. We just want some. But what would that mean? You need to have enough chickens to do that. And you got to have a massive amount of feed, sir. And you don't want to go having to import that. This is where another opportunity emerges. You then look at your agricultural engagement with Guyana and Suriname and say, look, we need you to produce the ingredients that we can make the feed that we are going to use for raising these chickens and making sure that it reaches the correct health standards that allows the chickens to gain the weight. That's what we can do. That's how CSME, building enterprise in CSME, will help us engage a large market, and that is how we're going to engage the EU. Imagine if we were able to do that. We would then become a viable competitor with the EU for space in the Ghanaian market in relation to chicken, sir. But what else can we do? Kenya is interested in a number of things with us, and shortly there will be a delegation going down to Kenya to explore. Kenya has been very assertive and very proactive in the relationship with us. They've sent a couple of delegations here that have engaged in firm discussions looking at specific initiatives that we can engage in. And one of the things that we're doing when we go to Kenya, sir, is to explore and further those discussions to develop something concrete that we can use. So we have to use the CSME space to build out our enterprises, sir, that they can engage the big players like the EU and the UK. Because if we can build capacity, we can trade in goods and services. The other thing that is going to be important, sir, is production, integration, and rationalization. And what that means, sir, is in the region, if the region is going to work to help us build capacity that we can engage large players and engage large markets like the EU and the UK and hold our domestic market at the same time, then it's necessary to rationalize our production capability. Right now, sir, we have a problem where 88% of everything that this region uses is imported from outside of the region. 88%. We only trade with each other 12% of our goods, although we have a CARICOM treaty. In the EPAs, when they assess how much trade partners create among themselves within their EPA agreement versus the rest of the world, CARICOM has the smallest percentage. The smallest, sir. Everybody else is doing 40%, 60%, making good use of their trade space in an EPA. We have not been doing that. And sir, we have made the matter worse. The few goods that we trade with each other, sir, we're busy duplicating the same production capability all over the place. We selling beer, we selling Banks beer, somebody selling Hyroon, the next body selling Red Stripe. Sir, beers competing, paint competing, toilet paper competing, pasta competing. Sir, when I go to a quartet to represent Barbados, we are struggling to give protection to these domestic industries, not from the outside alone, but from competition within the region too, sir. So it is important, one of the things that has to happen is that we have to bring the private sector of the regions together and be able to sit down and discuss how are we going to build a sensible production program that would give each enterprise a fighting chance to build sufficient market space. It doesn't mean that you have only one of something in the region, but you don't need 5 fighting for the little space. If you have 2, move to another product, sir. And that is going to be a heavy lift in the region, but it has to be done. One of the ways in which we can turn from trying to reproduce what everybody else is doing is to look at the opportunities that are open before us as CSME. Sir, I already spoke about the fact that we could look at poultry, we could look at pig farming too as something that we can do to raise money and how we would use the space to make that happen. But sir, I have another thing that's close to my heart that I'm trusting that the honourable member from the city will speak to, sir. If we are going to be able to build productive capability, we have got to grapple with NCDs, sir. NCDs are lowering the productivity of the country, and I'm trusting that the honourable member will speak to that today to help people to understand that we have got to change our diets, we've got to change our habits. I'm trusting and hoping, sir. You need to know that we've got to combat NCDs. But, sir, my view is, it is not just that you are looking to produce, it's not just that you're looking to battle the NCDs, changing diet and doing exercise. You have to facilitate it. And how are you going to facilitate it, sir? You have to produce healthy foods and get the population using them. And I see a trade opportunity in that. I see in agriculture, we can look at the high production of sweet potato, cassava, yams, all of those vegetables, fruits. And sir, we need our food technologists now to look at those foods and say, how can we develop a set of foods that would be attractive to our young people who have cultivated a taste for macaroni pie, cultivated a taste for cheesies and corn curls. Thank you, sir. So, my position is this, that if we can develop a set of foods that are healthy, that are tasty, and we can grow those products in the region, and more importantly, export it. Mr. Speaker, pizza is known every part of the world. It's an Italian dish. Everybody eats pizza. We have to look within our cuisine, sir, and identify something that we can offer to the world. And because the world is now looking for our health trend, sir, I believe that that is an opportunity for us to increase trade and to use the CSME space to produce it and export it and make a name for ourselves and make a mark and create a healthy CARICOM space, sir. I believe that. I dream about that too. And so does the Honourable Member for St. Philip South. Sir, one of the things that will be new on the horizon, you know, the world goes through trade trends. When certain sectors become really big and really important, we've gone through the IT, we've gone through a whole set of iterations of economic growth using different things. The big one on the horizon are the climate change industries. What has gone on this year across the world? Flooding, droughts, fires, extreme climatic conditions. Today, the Americans are looking forward to Thanksgiving. And already they have very heavy winter conditions that they say are unseasonal. Sir, the world is recognizing, and there's a powerful drive to force the world's population to recognize that climate change is a real threat to everybody, and all of us have to pull together to change. Pardon me, to change what we're doing, to change how we manufacture things, to change how we dispose of things. We've got to completely redo our entire world system in terms of how we do things so that we are climate friendly, we are environmentally friendly, we safeguard the quality of our water, we safeguard ourselves against extreme weather conditions, we build climate resilience, sir, and that we take care of the quality of our air. And an assessment was made, it was carried on the BBC, sir, where it is estimated that it would take the world $30 trillion per annum to completely change everything across the world that is currently affecting us in climate change. $30 trillion. When I heard that number, sir, I gave a gasp because I was wondering where we were going to get $30 trillion from. But the report went on to say that were we to invest $30 trillion, the gross domestic product of the world would grow by $143 trillion. Sir, those are numbers that I now have to get accustomed to and to understand. I was wondering if it was a joke. If it wasn't the BBC, I would have said fake news. Fake news. And you have different people doing assessments. But one thing is clear. When you sit and you do the economics of it, the investment in creating climate-friendly behaviors and products in the world, climate-friendly systems in the world, it is going to create a set of industries, sir. It is going to release a new wave of innovation and a new wave of investment, and will generate significant prosperity and better health for the people of the world. When I saw that, sir, I said, this is another opportunity for CARICOM. And why? We will have to play on a big stage. Can we play on that big stage? I say yes. I say yes, sir, because we have invested so much money in our education. That at UE, we have a department that deals with environmental science. We have people pursuing masters and PhDs in environmental science. Sir, we had the privilege as a cabinet to have come before us from the Ministry of the Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs a team of people who did a presentation to us to show us what they were doing in terms of mapping and being able to identify the risk associated with climate change so that we can give more certainty to insurance risks, sir. I was proud of them. We are doing scientific experiments, sir, off Barbados, looking at the clouds and the effect of clouds and so on climate change and big hurricanes, and looking at that dynamic to see what we can learn from it. Barbados, sir. Barbadian people, Barbadian brains. We have people who have developed products for sargassum seaweed. Sir, when I saw the sargassum seaweed coming across, when you look online and see all that mass of smelly weed coming across, clogging the waters, thinging the fish, sir, it was like, is this a blight? Is this a plague from Revelations that we are now experiencing as a country? Sir, it actually can be a blessing in disguise. Because from the sargassum seaweed, there are things that you can produce. Sir, the point I'm making is that in the region, we can sit down and look at a set of potential industries that we can do production rationalization that will allow us to trade in the EU and in the UK and do well. And this is the work that the Barbados Labour Party is doing. And when we do that, we will be able to use the skills of the people we're turning out from UE, and not only ones from UE, the people in our diaspora, the ones who've gone abroad and studied all kinds of things, sir, that we have not been able to utilize to create the economic growth that we need. But with the regathering, I want to say this now. I know that sometimes people say that they're not quite getting the regathering beyond people coming home. But I want to help the people of Barbados to understand that the regathering allows us to pull our diaspora home. It allows us to help identify who they are and where they are. But then what we need is an asset registry that we can see what are the skills and resources they represent and how we can utilize them and unfold them into our economic strategy to build out our strength in trade, in products and services, sir. And this is how we are going to fulfill the dreams of our young people, that they can dream about doing anything because they have a vibrant private sector that is engaging in all kinds of broad areas that allow them to be able to be a part of it. This, sir, is what the Barbados Labour Party is doing for the people, and those are the opportunities that the EPA represents for us to be able to get involved in having a market to sell those goods and services. There's another area too, sir, that if we are going to take advantage of the EPA, that we need to engage in terms of building out trade. And sir, that is looking at the development of value chains. As I said earlier, the pattern and the history behind trade was that the South produced the raw materials, the North did the production, they got the value added, and then they sold it back to us. They pay a coffee farmer in Colombia 10 cents a pound, sir, for his coffee beans that he has to take the time to grow, pick, get it to market, and then they sell the coffee at $15 a pound. And all the people in the chain make money except that coffee bean farmer. He could barely pay his family, take care of his family on 10 cents a pound for his coffee beans. And that happened to us with sugar, happens in Grenada with nutmeg, happened to us with bananas, it happens, sir. It's just the history. So one of the things that developing countries are looking at, how can we get further down the chain? Yes, if we produce them, can we go the next step to processing them so that we're selling a finished good or a nearly finished good that we can actually earn more from our labor? So traditionally, this is how we would insert ourselves into a value chain. For example, if you take cars, sir, sometimes if you don't understand how trade works, and you go put in a ban on Japanese cars or Chinese cars or something, sir, you may not recognize that the doors and the bearings and they don't have gearboxes now, but you know what I mean. The engine, the transmission, thank you, sir. That those things might have been made in the USA, something made in Korea, something made in England, and something made in Chile. That a car no longer has one home, but rather it is made up of many parts from many countries. And so one of the things that we can do, and this is a traditional way of dealing with the value chain, is that we find some item on the car to produce and build a whole industry in it and supply all the car manufacturers with this one little product, even if it's just the button that turns down the window. So that is one way of doing it. What's happening, for example, in Grenada, how they're looking at their value chain development. They grow cocoa, so they've decided that rather than just selling the raw cocoa, they're actually going to make chocolate products. And they're actually doing quite a neat little job of it because the chocolate is quite high quality and it just needs market. And this is where getting entrance into the UK and to the EU would be important for them. So what can we do here in Barbados? We've been trying with the Sea Island cotton to see if we can go down the value chain and actually produce the actual garments and so on. And no doubt, if we have any news on that, that will come at some point in time later. But I want to suggest that we have to get creative. The problem with the value chain is how do you get people to buy what it is you're producing? Now, sir, I was looking at the statistics for our imports. And because we were looking at if we have to cut tariffs in the EU and UK EPA, which we are obligated to do, that we have to bring them down. What are some of the goods that we could find another way to maybe increase a tariff or that we could produce, or what can we do to limit the loss of revenue coming from the fact that we have to reduce the tariff? So in looking at the stats, sir, I noticed something interesting. Remember I told you that CARICOM exports $8 million US in condiments and sauces to the EU. But I discovered that Barbados itself imports over $20 million worth of sauces and condiments into Barbados. And I was there saying to myself, no, why do we need so many sauces? So many condiments. And then I remembered the tourism industry, sir, that they're able to bring in their products duty-free, and they import a high number of sauces and so on into the country for use with their restaurants, sir. So when I was looking at it, I said to myself, but you know, people are looking for, tourists are looking for a real experience. They want to eat the local foods as well. What is the potentiality for us being able to develop a series of sauces and condiments that we could look to get into the hotel tourism stream and seek to get abroad with that same stream into other hotel chains? So I remembered something that happened to me a few years back. We were doing a session down at a major hotel on the West Coast. And I remember at the lunch break, when they served lunch, they served these grilled potatoes. And expecting the usual bland taste with maybe a little something on it, I tasted this exciting flavor in my mouth. I said, "Chef, what is this?" He says, "That's lemon pepper." Now, Barbadians generally don't use lemon pepper. I've seen it. I've looked at it, but was never interested in it. Wasn't curious about how lemon pepper would taste. But having tasted it on those potatoes, sir, let me tell you, I started buying lemon pepper. It is always in my house now. If people are going to use our sauces and condiments, they have to taste them. We have to find ways for people to engage it. And what better way to engage our UK visitors, who is the largest group that comes to Barbados, and our European visitors, to engage them in our sauces and condiments by seeing if we can persuade the chefs in our hotel to start to use those in their recipes, help them develop new recipes so that they have exciting dishes that they're offering people, and then have on the side, this is where you can get this flavor from, so that people can buy it and take it home, so they can pick it up in the airport. Could we even take it a step further? Now, sir, if a woman really likes a flavor and she wants that in her kitchen, and she's on holiday, and she's not going to buy one. We're going to buy 2 or 3 or 4, because we're not sure when next we come in here and when next we're going to get it. So we're going to buy quite a bit to take home. And when we get home, we're so excited about what we've discovered, we're going to tell somebody about it. So relatives and friends and people at work are going to be introduced to that new flavor. And in no time at all, you could actually create demand for the flavor. But we could go further, sir. Chefs here in Barbados, Barbadian chefs, some of them belong to huge hotel chains. How would it help if they took those condiments and send a gift to a fellow chef somewhere else and tell them, "This is how I use this, and it's great. Try it in your recipe." If that were possible, sir, just imagine if we could then get the sale of sauces and condiments and actually reduce our import bill, but at the same time build production capacity for us to be able to earn foreign exchange. That would help us. This is how we can get our goods into the European and UK markets. And I put that suggestion on the table, sir, because of what I'm seeing happening in hotels. Large hotels go into the big star hotels, the 5-star, the 5 diamonds, going for luxury. And sir, some of them have the most gorgeous bedding. And if you want your bedding, you can actually buy it. The hotel will actually sell you that bedding set. They will order it for you because people ask about it. That's why I have confidence that if we did it with the sauces and condiments, we could actually create something. The next thing that we need, and another opportunity that we need to engage, sir, is to look at 2 things. The suspensions that we apply for in quoted. Now, sir, when a manufacturer needs a particular item and it is blocked by the common external tariff, might be at 40% or 60% or 100%. And they need it for an input, say a Pine Hill dairy that needs it for juices, sir. They have to apply to COTED for a special suspension of the common external tariff to be able to get that particular product duty-free. But in order to be granted that suspension, the regional manufacturers and the regional enterprises have to signal to COTED that we do not have the ability to produce that particular good. So last week, sir, Monday, Tuesday, we had a COTED meeting. I represented Barbados. And again, the suspensions came. And the suspensions were around fruit and vegetables. They were around medicines, things like aspirin and cough mixtures and allergy medicines, menthol products, and so on. And it was around guava puree, etc. Around cheese, 30,000 tons of cheese. And one of the things that's necessary is that we have to pull our enterprises together to see what we are creating suspensions for, because that is a guaranteed market for you. That if you can produce in the quantities, you have to pick an item that has sufficient quantities that should you produce it, it would be competitive with the imported product, then we could protect that domestic, that regional production and get that particular input into our manufacturers. One of the things, sir, that has been contentious across CARICOM at COTED has been around the importation of refined white sugar. There has been a battle, sir, between plantation white and refined white sugar. Refined white sugar comes from the UK. Sir, that a sugar-producing region that sells its sugar to the UK has it refined and sold back to it. Or they take beet sugar and create the refined white sugar. And this region, sir, imports 397.5 metric tons of refined white sugar for use in jams and jellies, juices and drinks, ice cream, etc. The sugar producers like Belize, Barbados, Jamaica, other territories that produce sugar and that do plantation white are arguing that the plantation white sugar should be able to substitute for the sugar that is coming from the EU. That's what I'm talking about in terms of trade. That if we get our production right, we will be able to penetrate their markets. Sir, it has been a battle. It came to the point where they had to go and get an analysis to see if plantation white sugar is substitutable for refined white sugar. And by its nature, it has the possibility to be substitutable, sir. But there were some problems with the sugar. And so the analysis showed what were the problems with the plantation white sugar. And the producers of that sugar in the CARICOM countries were told what it is they needed to do so that we could then replace the sugar that we are importing, the 397.5 metric tons, how we could replace it with plantation white. It would make a lot of difference to the people in Belize, sir. It would make a lot of difference to people in Guyana and Jamaica and Barbados. But we have to do the work of ensuring that the product meets the quality standards of your local manufacturers, that it does not spoil anything, that it delivers in the way the refined white sugar delivers, so that we can substitute it. And this is how we would save foreign exchange, and we would actually broaden and stabilize our sugar industry. St. Kitts had to close theirs down because of the loss from the Lomé agreement, where we've lost our market in the UK. So there are things that we can do. There are things we can do. And the suspensions give us good opportunity, identifies good products that we can build production capability around. The other area, sir, that can help build out the regional production that would give us capacity to be able to sell to other markets is in government procurement. Government procurement is a great catalyst for business. The problem is that across the region, government procurement has been made captive by a handful of enterprises, and the cake is not spread sufficiently. And so governments have to use a lot of political capital, a lot of political will, to be able to broaden the participation in government procurement. I'm happy to report today to this chamber that the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, as the leader with responsibility for the CARICOM single market and economy, has been able to push through government procurement.
Honourable, you can't forget the term honourable.
Oh, Honourable, the Honourable Prime Minister, sir. Thank you, sir. That she has been able to push through at heads government procurement, where we are setting up, we have set up portals where nationally you can report and put on the procurement portal all of the contracts that you have coming up for tender so that they're open to more people to be able to bid for them. This will help broaden participation. And that anything over 250,000 US would go onto the regional portal so that instead of instantly reaching for somebody in some other territory somewhere outside of the region, we first search for the skills within the region and use them to fulfill our regional procurement needs, whether it's in goods or services. And only if we don't have it regionally, then we go extra-regionally. That way we keep the money circulating in CARICOM and creating prosperity through government procurement. And there are loads of areas for people to engage in government procurement, sir. So all of these things, only an aggressive regional production program is going to allow Barbados to be able to be ready to meet the competition that will be coming from goods in the UK, goods in the EU, and to be able to hold our own and make a space for our entrepreneurs, make a space for our young people to be able to live out their careers because there are opportunities in CARICOM businesses. If we take this seriously, we could transform the region and safeguard the livelihoods of people. And that was the work that was needed to be done. But what has happened over the 11 years, ever so welcome, wait for a call. And the last message is, cool it, take it easy, because Easy Boy was in town, and we are only wearing national colors. We have no interest in our CARICOM destiny. So, sir, there's a lot of work then to be done. That is why when we came to office, we had the mission-critical things. Those mission-critical things were issues that could have sunk this society, this economy, in no time, sir. If we did not solve the sewage issue, if we did not solve the water issue, if we did not solve the road problems, and we're trying to solve a number of other things, the foreign exchange problems, the debt problems, had we not done that, this country would have been flat on its back. And sir, I am so relieved because, sir, when we were in opposition, it was one of the most painful things to sit and watch the negligence and watch the danger that Barbados was falling into. And sir, with the advent of the Barbados Labour Party in 2018, we've seen such a major turnaround in the way government business is done and the amount of work we are trying to do, because, sir, we are here to save a nation, and there is so much that all of these ministries have to do to help take us not only to a place of safety, but take us to a place of prosperity. Now, sir, I've spoken a lot about goods, but I want to take a moment to share on services. What is interesting about the EPAs that we have, they give you access for the goods, they give you access for the services, but there's some little barriers to trade. And in services, countries have different ways in which you can engage this space. And the countries are able to choose how they want service providers to enter this space. So obviously, any country with its own self-interest is going to make sure that if you have a competitive advantage if the exporting country has a competitive advantage in cross-border trade, that is being able to use the internet to deliver trade and deliver services and so on. Or they have advantage in movement of persons where somebody goes and performs the service and goes back home. It is obvious that if they think that that's a threat to their service industry, some of them are going to put a block on those two modes to prevent too much of the other country's services and service providers entering their space. And so while we have an EPA that says, yes, you can come and bring your services, there are loads of roadblocks. And that's one of the reasons why we've not been able to do as well in services as we should be able to do. And one of the things that they've asked, because in the region, especially in Barbados, we have a tremendous advantage in terms of professional skills. We have people that have high quality, world-class skills that can be offered any part of the world. A lot of our diaspora have proven that. They've gone overseas, gone to universities, excellent skills, and those host countries hold on to them because they recognize these people can help build our nation. So one of the blockages to our being able to offer services in the UK and European countries is the fact that they ask for mutual recognition agreements. And what does that mean? It says we do not know what is the quality of your university education. We do not know what's the quality of your technical education. We do not know if what you're doing is equivalent to what our people are doing. We have no way of guaranteeing that quality. So hear what? If you want to come into our space, you have to be able to get a mutual recognition agreement signed in which the quality of your certification has to be examined to see its equivalency in our space before we will allow you to come and offer your services in our jurisdiction. Sir, that has put such a cramp on the export of services into the EU and the UK, it isn't funny. Sir, for 11 years, we have not been able to effectively penetrate those areas with our services. One of the problems has been getting the professional associations to come together and being able to create an assessment of their skills and to be able to enter into an agreement with the equivalent bodies in the importing country, in the EU, in the UK, to match the qualifications and to get the tick that says, yes, you are approved, you're an approved service provider, you can come in and offer the service. And so we've not had many of our service providers working on that. The management consultants are now trying, but they have a way to go. You've needed it with your engineering, you needed it with a whole set of services. The architects, however, have been able to come together, and after 10 long years, sir, they are now, we received the news just this week, that the architects are now in a position where they're going to be able to sign off on an MRA so that they can export their services into the European Union and into the UK. And that is good, sir, because it will help us to be able to showcase the skills that we have here in Barbados. The cultural industries is another area in which we have tremendous advantage, and we have to find ways to build the capacity of our cultural practitioners and to be able to give them the necessary supports, because there is a really high demand for cultural services across the world, Caribbean cultural services. Sir, a gentleman came to my office to speak to me, and he's from Germany. And he has indicated that, look, at the music festivals and so on, that there's a great demand for Caribbean music, that the Jamaicans are doing extremely well in Europe, being able to get their cultural services into the festivals and getting business for their entertainers and so on. And then when I made a visit to China, I saw it for myself. There's a great demand in China for the entertainment from the Caribbean. I mean, the audience couldn't understand the words, but they understood the music, sir, and they loved it. They ate it up. We took a cultural entrepreneur with us on that expo. And sir, he did so well at the expo that he gained five opportunities for November to come back to China to perform. I could not have been prouder. And when we talked through what was happening in China, we recognized that there were opportunities for entertainment. And so we have to be able to build our service sector that we can begin to take advantage of the opportunities under the EPA in Europe, in the UK, and in other parts of the world for our cultural industries. And I'm trusting that my colleague from St. Philip West will share with us what he has in mind for that. But there are some other things that we can do in terms of services. I'm going to share some things that are dear to my heart. They're things that we have to explore, sir. Everywhere that I've gone representing Barbados, when I have engaged countries, whether it's African countries, Caribbean countries, and so on, one of the things they always bring up when we talk about what can we do in terms of trade, they always bring up tourism. Barbados is known across the world as being a leader in tourism. And that pleased me very much, to know that Barbados is still seen as a place that has expertise that could be made available to them. And they've asked us to engage them in helping them with their tourism product development. It is something that I long to see. Across the region, sir, in another life, when I had to travel across the region offering my services as well, because I'm a services practitioner, every hotel that I went to, I could find a Barbadian. Barbados has provided the region with a cadre of hotel managers, people who occupy positions as general manager, resident manager, housekeeping manager, entertainment managers, talent managers, all across the region. I butt up on people who would have honed their craft here in Barbados, and they're out there helping to build capacity in the region. Sir, I'm saying we can take it further. Barbados made some mistakes in the early years in the development of our tourism product, and we've learned those lessons. We know what they are. We have the opportunity now to sit down and put together all that we have learned and be able to put together a master plan for tourism product development, offering it as a consulting service. Sir, to Guyana, they want it. Suriname, sir, they want it. Ghana, sir, they want it. Kenya, sir, they want it. People across the world want help in building a culturally relevant tourism sector in their space. And I'm hoping that Barbados will get to the stage where we can actually engage that. That's one of my pet services, sir, that I want to see develop and moved across the world. I believe we can earn a lot of money from it. Another one, sir, civil administrative services. I may or may not be the only person in Barbados who believes in it. I don't know. But it's there to me. I'll explain why. No civil service is perfect. You will have your good and your bad, just as you have in the private sector, your good and your bad. But one of the things that has always raised the Barbados Public Service above a number of other civil services in the world is the quality of some of its people, its specialists. Sir, we have people who are at the top of their game. We have technical officers that do excellent work. We were impressed at some of the presentations made to Cabinet when officers get up and share on their area of expertise and explain where Barbados is. And sir, Barbadians are really modest. We're doing some exceptional things and nobody knows about it. Nobody talks about it. The general public is not aware of what we're doing or what we have done. I will never forget, there was an interview on VOB about 4 years ago, and they were discussing with a medical team that had come into Barbados to do a special initiative with the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. They were coming to set up to do, I believe it was cancer tests. That they'd chosen Barbados as the place to be able to do the experiments and do the assessments, etc., and to be able to use our medical personnel to help them execute this, that they could develop data that will help them to develop the medications and the treatments that would be necessary to help us to cure and deal with cancer. So I remember that the interviewer said to the person who came in to organize it, they asked, but why did you select Barbados? And the reply was, well, Barbados had been chosen to get involved in an ice study, and they did the ice study so well and produced such excellent results. We had every confidence that we could give them the cancer study to do. The interviewer was surprised. He said, what ice study? So the interviewee was a little stunned. Well, how come you don't know about it? That is because, sir, Barbadians are busy doing good work, doing good things, and keeping quiet about it. And it got to stop. We got to blow a trumpet. We have to shout to the world what we can do. We have to showcase Barbadian excellence. That's another reason, sir, for having regathering to find our diaspora, because we are trying to find our global stories. We are trying to find the people who have been doing things of excellence and to be able to use those stories to promote Barbados in all the different places where we want to do business and to do trade, so that people know Barbados is a place that you can do business with. That's what we're doing. That is what we're doing. And, sir, we have people, one of the things they talked about, the Barbados brand. And one of the things that I learned when we were last in office was that whenever an international body wanted to pioneer or to start some new initiative in the developing world, they had learned over time that Barbados had a way of taking an initiative, understanding the objectives, and making the necessary adjustments to make it fit the Barbadian case so as to produce superior results. And that time and time again, Barbados used to come out at top, first, leading in a number of things, because we had civil servants who were able to take these studies, take these initiatives, adjust them to suit the domestic land space, and implement it in a way to produce results. And that is how the Barbados brand was born. It was not born out of the private sector. It was born from out of the civil service. And I want people not to forget it. We have issues, but we also have some wonderful people that have done some wonderful wonderful work. So what happened in the international arena, sir, was that anytime they then had something to do, Barbados would always be one of the chosen for the pilot project, because they knew that we were going to come up with a way to do it, that they could then take the Barbados brand, take the Barbados model, and then transplant it across Africa and across the CARICOM and different places, because that was the way we were able to operate. So when I say that we have civil administrative services, that if we take the time to document them, we take the time to improve them, especially now that we're using smart technology to be able to improve efficiency and improve the processes. If we were to take our civil administrative services to the max, sir, we could have a set of people who could go across the world offering civil administrative services to help other countries to transform their governments so that their governments are able to serve their populations with high quality, efficient services that will cause their economies to grow. And sir, the intended purpose of this government is to be able to bring the necessary public sector reform in Barbados to develop ourselves to go to that very highest level. And sir, I am trusting that when we are able to do that, we will be able to create the spin-off civil administrative services that we can earn foreign exchange. That civil servants, sir, could look forward to being able to buy shares in a consulting service, a civil administrative consulting service, that they're able, when they retire, to take their skills and go into that consultancy and be able to offer what they have learned to other countries across the world. It's important. It's important. I'll explain why it's important, sir. I know I've been speaking for a long time, but sir, I'm very passionate about these things. I'm very passionate about these things, sir. China, 1.2 billion people. 300 million of them travel. Sir, and because they are coming into wealth in a very fast way, young people, in no time at all, becoming multimillionaires. Sir, when I went to China, I realized you could not swing a cat without making money. If a Barbadian went there and opened a Chinese restaurant, they would make money, sir. 1.2 billion people to sell something to. Sir, they don't need to sell to the rest of the world if they don't want to. They could move their GDP like that. But here is what I realized. When I first went, sir, I felt a little, well, what could we sell to China? It makes everything. It has everything. Barbados is too far for people to travel. You know what I discovered, sir, when I went there? The middle class in China want to have the experiences that they've seen the Western world engage in. And travel is attractive to them. If you stand up in London, sir, you can't stand there for 10 minutes without a group of Chinese people passing you. As a matter of fact, you cannot stand up in London and hear too many British voices in your ear, because you will hear Europeans, you will see Chinese, you will see Japanese. They're all there. They're looking for experiences. So when I asked, well, what could Barbados do in terms of tourism? What could we do? I heard that one of the challenges would be distances. It's so long, it's a long trip. I heard that really Chinese people are not interested in lying on the beach and getting a suntan. As a matter of fact, Chinese women protect their complexion with umbrellas all the time because they want to maintain as fair a skin as they can. So sea, sand, and sun is not going to be our attraction. So I asked the question, well, what would attract them to the Caribbean? And this is what they said. They said, look, they spend money. They're not going to come for a week. They're going to come for 2 weeks. They're going to come for 3 weeks. They like multi-destination tourism. They don't want to go to one country. If they're going to travel so far, they want to go to several countries. When they come, they want things to do. They don't want to wake up in the morning and ask the question, well, what are we going to do today? Should we go on the beach? Should we go shopping? No. They want a schedule of activities. We're going to visit this place, we're going to visit that place, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And so cultural and heritage tourism is big for them. They want to see our culture. They want to engage our history. They want to participate in ceremonies and various things that they would find exciting. But they want multi-destination packages. So, sir, if we don't help the rest of the CSME, if we don't help the OECS, if we don't help Guyana, Suriname, and Belize to help to build up their economies, to help them to put in their tourism product development, we do not have a package we can give them. If you put a package of Barbados and 2 other territories and they're not up to mark in the experience, it destroys the multi-destination package that we want the Chinese. And sir, we only want 20 million coming across. We don't want all 300. 20. That's all. But sir, we have to be ready for them. If we're going to be serious about engaging the Chinese market, and you know what I was told, sir? They're already going to Panama. Well, if they could get as far as Panama, they could get as far as Barbados. Huh? So, sir, when I look at the opportunities, I had to send back a text to excited about what could happen in China. So therefore, we have to fast track the tourism product development, help the rest of the region to lift the product so that the quality is good, and then begin to build those multi-destination packages and go after that Chinese market. And I'm telling you, sir, if we're able to do that, we're going to be able to fill the coffers of government with revenue. We're going to be able to build our foreign exchange. And most of all, we're going to be able to take Barbadian products and services, make sure they're available in the hotels, that the Chinese can engage and taste and be a part of what it is we produce, that they go home and talk about our stuff and want to take our stuff with them. Sir, this is what we can do in services, but we have to do it together. Small nations like ours have to fight and struggle, sir, to find a place, but it can be done if we use the opportunities that are before us. I want the people of Barbados to know that they do not have a slothful government. I want them to know that they have a government that is proactive and hardworking and creative, looking for opportunities, working to bring together those opportunities and get the population to connect to those opportunities to make sure that we can build a future. Sending our children back to UE was not a sweet political election gimmick. If you understand Barbados, you would know that you could never do that. That Barbados has to continue to produce high quality, high skilled people, that we can populate our services industries and our production industries and to be able to use them to be able to export across the world. That is why UE must always be there. That's why SJPI must be transformed. Sir, there's work to do, and my colleagues, every one of them, have work to do to help to make our trade strategy work. And I'm looking forward to hearing their contributions on this matter. I'm looking forward to our collaborations, because in order to make this work, the silos have to drop. Ministries have to work together. We have to source the best talent. We have to deploy the best talent. We have to take our limited resources and put those resources into key things that will grow the economy, that will generate more money for us, that we can then take that money and do our social services. We can take that money and look after our welfare. We can look after our senior citizens. Sir, that we can look after giving opportunities to other entrepreneurs that are coming along the road. We owe it to the people of Barbados to put them back on a road of prosperity. We owe it to them. What has happened in this 11 years is a travesty. We have unfaired a generation. Unfaired them. I hear them in my constituency. Young people telling me, Miss Husbands, I have a degree, but I can't get a job. Miss Husbands, I was working and I lost my job. I'm struggling now with my mortgage. This has not been fair to them. So, sir, I want to be able to commend this bill to my colleagues. I want to be able to say to them, I know they're tired. We've been working very hard, but we have to work harder in 2020. We have to make regathering work because we have to find our diaspora so that we can collect our assets, see what we have in terms of talent across the world, and how we're going to engage them in economic activity. We have to shut our ears to the noises of people talking about when they're traveling here, when they're traveling there. We have to travel. How are we going to engage the world if we stay at home? They're not coming to us. We have to go to them. How are we going to benefit from this EPA if we don't get out there and go and find the business? Sir, I can understand the population, general population not understanding, but the people who should know better, they need to keep their mouths shut. We have work to do, and I want to commend this bill to my colleagues. I want to commend it to the opposition. I want to commend it to Barbados. We have to work together. We must not score home goals. Later today, God willing, I'm hoping we will get the chance to hear from the Minister from the MP for St. Michael North, sir. Every time that we find a niche in which to function, somebody comes to drive us out the corner. Dynamics change. So it has these small countries running from pillar to post. But I have news for the world. Barbados is coming. We are coming with a plan. We are going to develop a strategy and implement it that will cement this country on the world's history's page. We're going to write our names on that page. People are going to see what a small nation can do. And I am privileged to be a part of it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be read a second time.
I'd like to second it, sir. I reserve my right to speak. Mr. Speaker, with that, I wish to suspend the sitting until 2:15 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chair will be suspended until 2:15 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. This chamber stands suspended until 2:15 p.m.